You know, for 50 years, one single system has pretty much anchored global finance, and with it, American power. But recent events are starting to shake its very foundation. So today, we're going to explain the arguments for why the petrodollar, that absolute core pillar of the world economy, might actually be in decline.
And that right there, that is the bold claim at the very heart of the analysis we're looking at today. It's suggesting that a foundational piece of the global economy isn't just changing, it's actively falling apart. And that the cause is coming from inside the house. It's a huge statement, so let's unpack how this source gets there.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? To even begin to understand what's happening right now, we have to go back to the beginning. How was this whole thing built? How did it work? And what specific events, according to this analysis, are now causing it all to fracture? So before we can even talk about the cracks, we got to look at the foundation itself. Let's do a quick breakdown of what the petrodollar system even is and why it's been so incredibly important for the last half-century.
Okay, so here's the deal in a nutshell, as the source describes it. It all started with an agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia. And the arrangement was actually pretty simple. The United States provides security for key oil-producing regions, and in return, the world's most vital commodity, oil, is bought and sold using US dollars. This had absolutely massive implications.
Now, this is where it gets really clever, because this deal created this incredible feedback loop. The US provides security, oil gets sold in dollars. This forces every single country that needs oil to buy and hold US dollars, which creates this constant built-in global demand for the currency. And that strong demand, in turn, allowed the United States to borrow money way more cheaply than anyone else. For decades, this system just worked.
So how did such a stable system begin to fray? Well, according to the analysis we're exploring, the threat wasn't from the outside. The source argues the damage was actually self-inflicted, undermining the very bedrock of the pact.
And here's the absolute core of the argument from the source. First, Washington began to weaponize the dollar through things like sanctions, which pushed other countries to start looking for a way out, a workaround. And at the very same time, the US allegedly started to falter on its end of the bargain, that security guarantee that held the whole system together in the first place.
And this really just puts it in black and white, right? The original deal was a super simple exchange. But as this analysis presents it, if one side of that bargain, the security guarantee, starts to look less credible, well then the other side, the exclusive use of the dollar, is no longer a sure thing. And this created a perfect opening for an alternative to pop up.
Okay, so if you've got this new opening, what's going to fill the void? The source points directly to the rise of the Petro-Yuan, a parallel system where oil is traded in China's currency, the yuan, completely bypassing the dollar.
Now, the key player in this whole shift, according to the analysis, is Iran. By using its strategic control over the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the most important energy choke points on the planet, Iran has apparently started to change the rules of the game, creating a real-world test for this new system.
And here's where we see some actual examples popping up, cited in the source. Reports of things like transit fees or entire oil trades being settled in Chinese yuan. They might seem like small deals, but symbolically, they're huge. Every single transaction that avoids the dollar is just one more crack in that old system.
Right, and this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing. The source points out that China seems to have been getting ready for this. In the months leading up to recent conflicts, it reportedly built up a massive strategic oil reserve, something like 1.2 billion barrels. That basically gave it this huge cushion to navigate any supply problems and really deepen its energy relationships outside the traditional system.
Okay, so this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, and it's a real paradox. Because even as all these foundational cracks are appearing, on the surface, the US dollar has actually been getting stronger. So how can both of those things be true at the same time?
Let's just jump right into this paradox. The source we're looking at points out that whenever there's a big global crisis or a lot of uncertainty, investors traditionally rush to the US dollar as a safe haven asset. This creates a really weird situation where the dollar's immediate strength might be kind of hiding a much deeper, long-term structural weakness under the surface.
Yeah, this lays it out perfectly. On the surface, you've got this flight to safety, which pumps up the dollar. But underneath all that, the analysis argues that central banks all around the world are quietly making moves, trying to reduce their long-term exposure to just one single currency.
And this chart really shows you what's happening behind the scenes. The source points out that the dollar's share of global reserves is on a slow, steady decline. It's actually hit its lowest levels in decades. So even while investors might rush to the dollar in a panic, governments are slowly but surely moving away from it.
And you can see this diversification happening in real time. The source highlights countries like Brazil, which is essentially taking dollars off its own conveyor belt and replacing them with gold. This isn't just an isolated incident. It's part of a much bigger global shift to reduce dependence on any one currency.
And this is where it all leads. The ultimate takeaway from this analysis is, this isn't just about currencies or financial plumbing. It's being framed as a direct challenge to geopolitical power. The argument is that the two are just completely inextricably linked.
So we end up right back where we started, with the foundation of the whole system. The source leaves us with this incredibly powerful question. Since the entire PetroDollar pact was built on a trade, security for currency dominance, the future of that dominance might depend entirely on whether confidence in that security can be restored. And that's a question with no easy answer at all.